Hello everyone and welcome to Gierok Farms. This evening we wanted to take some time and give you a crop tour. It is currently September 7th while I'm filming this. We are just finishing off with the 2024 summer hay season and we are about to head into fall harvest. So we thought it'd be a good time to do some yield checks and compare some fields and the different planting styles or management styles we have here on the farm and how it affected yield this year before harvest is underway. So starting off here on the back end of the farm, we are checking this no-till sod cornfield here, and it is looking awesome. This is just a cob from the edge.
I think the only place this field ain't perfect is we get along the trees. I know I walked down there a week ago, the raccoons are really having their way with it. But the neat thing is, and I see we got a little something going on there, but these are on the edge too. But they're filled out pretty good.
Yeah, so we went into the field a couple rows here, and
there's a little something started. Some bug is going at some of it, but I guess for all the moisture we had early in the summer, they look pretty good. That looks like 22 rows, doesn't it? 20 here. There's 20, 22, let's see what this one is. This is maybe about the same. This is 18. But I mean, they're thick cobs. This has been in sod for, I think, God, it could be 10 years. And it was mostly orchard grass kind of towards the end there. And then we sprayed it out in the spring. You got a video when we were doing that. This here really went to town, this stuff, and it's tall.
yeah, and it was a true representation of no-till and its tendencies, because starting off it definitely looked behind compared to everything else. And
it always does. It struggles at first. And I think this year, one thing is no-till, it can handle moisture very good on this. This is a really steep side hill anyway. So this is a 97-day rank.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact number, but it's the same corn we put on the big flat.
Yeah.
For silage, except that's corn on corn on corn, and then heavy bottoms, and there probably was wetter down there. Up here we had good drainage. The one thing is I was so amazed that even before the corn canopied, when we sprayed this was like a foot tall, this hay. I mean, it was pretty thick, and it's like, I think from all the moisture and maybe there's more bacteria and stuff, it ended up either, I don't know, reabsorbing back into the soil or rotting down to the point where you can't even tell it was even a hay field. You know, normally you kind of see part of that rug yet, even in the fall. So can't complain here. This is only like a 3-acre field, but
yeah, and this is 38-inch rows. So if we take 35 times, what'd you get? You said 20 and 22, right?
Yeah.
So they're roughly 35 long by 22. We'll count our eggs before they hatch.
Minus the 25 raccoons that were in here.
Yeah.
Maybe that bear that made a mess on the other end.
It's definitely approaching that 200 bushel an acre, especially if these were cobs on a 30-inch row or less. We for sure would be well into the 200s.
I just think this crop has everything it needs and then some. I mean, because for one thing, it was in sod forever. It's been manured very respectably every year, between every crop even of hay. And then it was manured really heavy after I decided we're going to put it in corn in the spring, and then we sprayed it, and then we planted with that 900 air planter.
And I don't think this field experienced the leaching that the other fields did. And we'll go see.
I mean, that's just it, because I think part of it was the sod held on to everything.
And then while we're up here, I wanted to take a look at our hay stands up here that we just harvested about a week ago.
Yeah, I cut them exactly a week ago. This stuff was just partially bloomed. Well, it was about half bloom, I suppose. So this would have been new seeding 2 years ago. So this would be the second year of just hay. So actually 3 years ago it was oats and new seeding, and then last year was hay, and then this year it's hay.
Yeah.
And then that one would be 4 years ago oats, and then already 3 years of hay.
And it's very noticeable. This is a very dense stand of alfalfa. This would have had its prime year when we had a drier year. So I think that alfalfa really was able to take over.
Yeah. New seeding is always interesting that way. It does better on a drier start. It drives the roots got to go for water. Once they're down there, well, even though you get a lot of rain or leaching, they're down there where and then this field too was in sod. I think it was like 94 last time I had corn here, or 93. I think maybe 93. And then I seeded it in 94, and then it's just been hay ever since. And then eventually it got to be just orchard grass. And then we would just make, like, for instance, we'd make our heifer hay here, you know, after we chopped all our better stands, we would just make little squares out of this in later June. So that's been, and then we would graze it. So we'd set electric fence along this driveway here, and then, because this connects up with our cow pasture really well. So it's been sod forever, and then I put 2 years of corn in here, and then we went to this. I think that's why this one's really kicking some butt. The rotation was very long. It was getting to the point where if we had got a drier years with that grass, you know, you don't get a lot. You know, a year like this, everything grew a lot, so it didn't make much difference this year. But that one's got a little more grass in. Of course, that's typical for stands of alfalfa. We do put grass in it. See here, the rate is always the same. I usually buy a mix of different stuff. Sometimes I'll buy some of them don't even have orchard grass in, so then I'll buy some and put it in there with it, mix it. You know, maybe we got 8-10 pounds per acre of grass. I mean, some guys might debate that, but it all depends on the type of year. So now the new seeding on the other field too, the rate was the same. There's more grass showing there than there was there.
Yeah, and if you guys remember, that was kind of looked a little iffy where we left it and we didn't harvest it the year it was new seeding.
So last year that was oats. Typically right now at corn silage time we would cut that. So oats just took off last week of July or the first week of August. So then, you know, usually you don't get a lot of growth back, but new seeding. So now we get into early September, we cut that. It might have some weeds and different. Some of the oats comes back and stuff. So that's going to go in. It would have went in our pile. But yeah, last year being so dry, it was there. It just was not a lot. So we left it.
Yep.
And it showed this year. We got 3 crops off of there, pretty heavy stuff.
Yep, but primarily more grass.
More grasses. It all depends on the moisture you get when you seed it, and the only downside to it, grasses sometimes really compete with the alfalfa, but when we bale for dry hay, you can't beat it. You want grasses in your hay. And what happens, even that roll bar rake, and my brother brought this to my attention. So when you cut your hay, all the leaves and alfalfa plants, the stems are down, everything else is up, and then with that grass with it, and when that rake rolls it like a rope, which isn't always the best answer, but for alfalfa, with that orchard grass, it almost puts it inside like a basket.
Yeah, versus losing your leaves.
You really save the leaves. Otherwise, yeah, those other type of rakes are a better deal to fluff the hay and just move it.
And then the stands on the other side of the corn here, on the farthest point of the farm, those are looking good as well. It really showed that we got plenty of water this year. That was some of our younger stuff that we just harvested with all of this, and that was some pretty lush hay silage over there.
The third crop, I think this is some of the best hay we've made in quite a few years again. It's the timing and then the weather, you know, because it seemed like the rains and everything, there's more space in between and they're more gentle. Our big stormy 3-inch rainfalls are behind us.
Yeah, it should be a pretty calm fall with the way it's looking. So anyways, that's the hay on top of the hill. We're gonna move over to some pasture that we did some work on and see what kind of results we have there. All right, so we made our way to one of our permanent pastures that the dairy herd is on, and they're currently grazing and on their way back to the dairy barn for evening milking. It is a beautiful day for grazing. I think they're taking advantage of it. But if you guys remember this spot, this is where we tried out that Ranch Works Pasture aerator, that 12 by 36 drum with those 6-inch blades on it. You can still tell where it went. You can still tell that it aerated the soil, and you can still see the cuts it made.
If you go off to the side, like when I was going up there with the 4-wheeler before, you could still see the pattern, like looking, and that's sometimes where the sun hits.
It might be kind of hard to see, but you can definitely tell based on the type of grass from where Dad made his passes versus where he didn't go because it was too steep.
It's really thick, this grass. I mean, this has been a heck of a pasture year, and we had starting to get a little drier now. That's why it's really hard to tell. Really dry conditions.
Yeah.
And we would have really, you know, put the weight on that thing and went to town, and then you get moisture. I think definitely you would see a takeoff with your grass.
Yeah. Which this fall, if it stays around, we might get a chance to use it some more. There's definitely a slight difference here between where you went and where you didn't go. And then I know something they mentioned to me is that it kind of helps with weed control. I don't remember how high you went here, but there's a definite line where these weeds are versus
this ragweed, and I think the theory is the grass will become dominant if it's able to, and the weed won't have a chance because it's smothered out. It's managed right, and it's got what it needs.
And you don't allow those broadleaves to canopy.
And especially if it's mowed all the time, a grass doesn't necessarily have to seed.
with mowing or even this aerator, they claim that if you stay on that, you can notice a difference with your weeds, and there definitely is. There's a line right here, kind of where river is out there.
Yeah, you can see where.
Definitely help with that. But like Dad was saying, I think last year would have been the year to really see, especially if you timed it out just right before a rainstorm.
So last year it was so dry midsummer, and then it was about this time last year we started getting, I think we ended up with, I want to think like 5 inches of rain in a week, but it wasn't nothing really heavy, but it was so dry before that it didn't seem to, you know, we didn't affect anything as far as having too much water. But boy, did the pastures really bounce back, and that would have been, I think then we'd have probably seen more of a defined line.
Yeah, and then speaking of pasture growth, there's some of this you mowed twice this year, right?
Well, this part I didn't, but I had a few spots over the hill, and you can see like there's a lot of ragweed, and I think the fertility in those really steep spots. See, when cows graze, they'll graze that in the spring more when that new growth comes, because all those weeds are just going to dry up and they're going to lay down, and then that nice grass comes at the beginning, and then by July all this other stuff starts coming through. But they don't lay there, so most of the manure, it's either going to be in the ravine or on top of the hill, and that's where we seem to get the thickest growth. You have to ask yourself if you want to, how much you want to put towards that, because just to manage it when it's so ungodly steep. You want to see it green, you don't want to see the eroding. I don't like to see trees because then they shade other areas, but we try to focus on the areas that you can, like this area isn't too bad. It's very consistent, and even on that slope.
But by no means would we ever be able to rotate this into a different crop and start over. We kind of got to keep this grass.
I wouldn't say that twice, but I won't be.
Yeah.
This is definitely, this area of our farm is definitely a pasture.
Yeah, and that's where this aerator works long term. It could be a really valuable tool for pieces of the farm like this. But we're gonna move on to our main farm valley and some of our main cornfields and get a look at how this wet year has affected those fields. Okay, we're down here in our main farm valley. Mason is mowing this new seeding piece from this year. The oats were just harvested off of this a little over a month ago now.
It was the last few days of July. We're already seeing a few blossoms. And what are we now? Today's date is
September 7th.
Kind of rare because usually the new seeding isn't booming, you know, and I think that heat really shoved things along. So we did put some potash on this. I put 1 ton on 6 acres right after that oats and straw was took off.
I think it's good that we're able to mow this like we normally would with new seeding for that third crop, you know, after oats or whatever. Because you do have some weed pressure, and mowing this and will kind of help that, kick that back and let some grass
and I think what we're concerned about, if we didn't mow it, let's just say we didn't need to forage or we weren't going to mess with it, this stuff lays down and the oats and the weeds smother a lot of your alfalfas. Even though it's getting later, this is going to have enough time to green up some yet. It isn't that late yet, as long as your fertility is good. I've always noticed that if the fertility's good, even cutting it after September 1st is not a big issue.
And with our forecast here, we got another good week or two of nice warm weather. And by no means is this going to be a field that's susceptible to winter kill. It's not up on a knob or up on top of a ridge or anything.
I think if it
like
was
that.
just pure alfalfa and it wasn't all these weeds in here, if you didn't need the hay, it's okay to leave it. You know, it's like you're leaving you're going to get it next year. But no, there's a lot of stuff here. This is just the opposite of last year. Last year would have been nothing.
Yeah. So the new seeding's looking good this year. It's starting to fill out nice, and this cutting will make it even more uniform for next year. So now we're going to check one of the first cornfields planted this year. Right, Dad? This is the first one you did?
Yeah, this is the first I did. Now, this is a 94-day rank. It was just turbo-tilled. So last year it was no-till sod.
And this is 38-inch rows with that cyclone planter. And this looked the best, like right away off the bat.
I mean, they're filled out good. Again, it all got manured good, and I put 200 pounds of starter on. We didn't do any side dressing here. Like I said, this field's been manured pretty good. And there's a little bit lighter ground in this field. You can't really call it sand, but it's just lighter. And I think that, and then it's sloped not nearly as steep as the one up on the hill, but the drainage is good. Yeah. Definitely. I've always had good luck with hay and corn. We always had good luck with this field.
It gets plenty of sunlight and it drains well. It's not like the bottoms where it gets oversaturated.
Well, that's really the only downside of those bottoms. When it gets super wet, it's gonna affect it.
Yeah, we got 18 here. And that just goes to show that even the better looking stuff at the beginning of the season isn't really it isn't really a telltale sign that that's going to be your most productive
It is a
field.
94 day, and the plants are all there. I mean, we can't complain. There's been a lot of talk in this area where some of these sales guys that get around a lot, they kind of come driving up in, and their first say is, your corn looks great compared to everything else we see. So just along the driveway, it is about as good as it can be for considering the year.
Yeah, so this has been I don't even know if you can call it a pest, but it has definitely taken over the outer rows of this field, these flowers.
The only downside to these morning glories, I think that's what they call them. Now this started way down by the corner of our farm there.
Yeah, so probably at least a third of a mile away from here it started.
What's going on there, so we got our milk sign there and some flower stuff there, and I think in the fall we cleaned out the flower bed and we just kind of threw it in the cornfield after the corn was off. But I think the tillage keeps dragging those seeds further and further, so every year they're seeding out. But they're not affecting the corn. They first wound up on here after everything is in place. The only concern I got is if this stuff's going to be plugging a picker or something.
Yeah. Let's go look at our main field that we just opened up today. We're going to be chopping corn silage here for the next couple days. And these are our main corn fields. So here you can see on the corner of our field, compaction and that water saturating here and pooling definitely took advantage of this corn right on the corner. But that's only a couple spots here on the bottom where the water took over. And you can see how it improves as water infiltration gets better.
There's a little bit back there, but the cobs are definitely smaller. But this is corn on corn forever.
And like we were saying, a lot of water, a lot of rainfall this year, and leaching was definitely an issue on these bottoms. And it was an issue for everybody in this area. But I gotta say, comparing, the neighborhood, tillage on the bottoms was definitely a saver to help dry things out and not lose all your nitrogen right away.
Some of the better ground around us here, where they always had an excellent crop, is showing a lot of yellow.
Yeah, really bad.
Yeah. So I think nobody knows. Like last year, I'm sure they did the same program this year as last year, and it's just last year everybody's corn looked good.
Then on a dry year, some of those other fields we just looked at first, those would be hurting because they wouldn't have got the water and wouldn't have been able to hold the water.
You never know, and that's really the thing. So you kind of just gotta do a balance of what you normally see.
And I think that's the beauty of where we farm, is that not all of our eggs are in one basket because we have so many different soil types and so many different fields. Where not every field and every acre is the same.
North sides, south sides, and then like the stuff here near the buildings, across from our buildings, that hills that's got a little more lighter ground in it versus on the back end, heavy clay. Even better part is cattle, especially dairy. So you got your heifers and your dry cows and then your milk cows for your better feeds. So even though, for grain, this isn't going to be no big yielder here, but we're going to chop the whole plant. We're going to utilize every bit of it anyway. And that's the other part. The manures come back, so then you're able to. There's definitely night and day here, and there might be a few spots in this field. I think up along the hill. We'll see tomorrow when I start chopping, but we maybe got a third of this field ain't looking too bad. But like you said, these headland rows.
Yeah, where we got the compaction and we had water pooling, it's definitely noticeable. So we crossed the road and this is still that 97-day rank?
Yeah, all the bottoms are 97-day rank, one on the hill, otherwise you got 94 over there.
Yeah, so this was planted, what, maybe 2-3 days after this field out front
No,
here?
I think almost the next day.
Oh, okay.
2 days at the most. But yeah, we planted that, and then maybe a day, maybe 2 days at the most, we planted all the bottoms.
Yep, and then the no-till, that was Mother's Day, along with my corn, that was Mother's Day as
That
well.
one we left a little bit longer because we were letting that burn down on that hay a little bit, just to be sure that was working right. And this field, the other end, has been known to be wet. It's definitely shorter, but it's consistent all the way through too.
It's a similar story to the other bottom piece, but Dad did mention that for some reason the herbicide program over here, it seemed to do a better job. Like this field canopied quicker or something compared to...
Yeah, and some of it might have to do with, the manures and different things. The edge of this field's always been a bit more of a battle. But I don't know, but it's all pretty heavy soils and it's all been manured pretty good. Yeah, because we moldboarded that whole thing, but the center of this field I think was chisel plowed. So once we get in here harvesting, we might be able to see that, if we can see that line.
That
I'm
difference.
Kind of
Yeah.
And we had that cover crop, which is awesome too. I think that's part of what really saved this field far as is that looking at least what it does, because any of the heavy bottoms around here look way worse.
Yeah, all that organic matter really helps, you know, water infiltration.
Yeah.
And that cover crop helps break up compaction, even though we still do have some like on our headland
And then
rows.
it did hold on to the nutrients.
Yeah.
Or, you know, or
But you know, it created more organic matter, and organic matter isn't going to leach. You know,
Yeah,
it's going to help hold on to stuff.
Yeah.
So we're definitely happy comparing to fields that don't have it.
And that's really the best way is to look at the whole neighborhood. I mean, that kind of gives you a gauge of did you make a better decision for the type of year?
Yeah.
I mean, you're never going to win these things 100%. And I don't know, doing this for over 30 years now, 33 years, it'll still bother you a little bit.
Yeah.
But you learn to think, oh, we've been through that before. It'll be better next year.
Yeah, and your biggest variable you can't control. It's the weather. So
It's Mother Nature.
yeah.
We can't predict her. We have to adapt to her.
Yeah, you can just do the best you can, and everything else lines up, then it'll turn out good. Okay, we are on the other end of that main cornfield that we checked here, and it's a very noticeable difference compared to the lower side of the field. This side of the field, it kind of slopes up, some lighter soil. It wasn't affected by the heavy rains so much. Way better looking cob. Night and day difference there. That's 18 around and filled out quite nice. Another good representation on how soil type makes a huge difference, and your water situation definitely makes a difference. Okay, we are on the hayfield that's on the front side of the farm. It was our last cut field for second crop, one of our older stands, and we put a test strip out here with that aerator. With the drone, you could see a line down here in the field. It's not as obvious. You can kind of slightly tell right in here where the plants do seem a bit taller, the alfalfa plants on the left versus the right. So it definitely did encourage a little bit more growth up here on top. And I brought the compaction probe, give that a test, and see if we notice any difference with the stuff that the aerator ran over versus the stuff that didn't. So by no means did that just slip in, but we are up on top. Let's go into our non-aerated stuff. Trying to stay on top of the knob so it's pretty comparable. So I went in about 6 to 8 inches for both tests, and I don't know how well I picked it up here filming by myself, but in the aerated ground we got just to about 200, and this is up on top. This is some firmer ground that could use some aeration and some compaction improvements. And then I went off of our test strip into our control, and we got to about the lower 200s there. So there is a slight difference here after about a month. And like we were saying, ideally the drier the better when using this aerator, and we've just had a really wet year so far. Something I do want to test though is the entrance of the field, where we went over it twice. Really wanted to break up the compaction there because we're exiting and entering the field, so I want to give that a test and see if we've made any improvement, because I could barely get the probe in the ground over there before we aerated it. So we definitely still have some compaction. By no means did we eliminate it all. Even after this ground settled and hardened back up, there was still improvement. Before, I was barely able to get the probe in the ground, and here I was able to get through that top couple inches before I was fighting that compaction. Moral of the story, I like what I'm seeing here. Huge shout out to RanchWorks for letting us try out their aerator and put it to work on our farm. It was awesome to demo it. If you too want to learn more about their aerators, you can check out our other videos or check out their website at ranchworks.com. I'll have that down in the description, along with a number if you want to call them and talk to them. I can definitely see how long-term you could reap the benefits of using that aerator, especially with the right type of climate or the right weather conditions for that year, if it was drier, you would definitely notice a difference. Or if you had problem areas with water runoff, that would help eliminate it. I'm gonna head back to the four-wheeler. The last field I wanna check is my field, my corn ground. Give you guys a bit of a comparison. Show you the good, bad, and the ugly up there. Definitely some room for improvement. All right, we're up on my corn ground, but let's walk in here a ways and see what we're getting for a cob. Now, compared to the other corn we looked at, this is 30-inch versus 38-inch rows. So we're able to have a higher planting population here compared to 38-inch rows. We're able to push that 32, 34, I think, if I wanted to. So we're able to get a couple more plants in the field, which is a good thing, as long as our ground can handle it. So I'm in a guest row now, and that was definitely more operator error than anything, along with side dress, spraying, and my poor planting. We definitely lost some yield there when it came to planter rows not being uniform and even. We definitely lost some yield there. Something that I knew would be an issue, and it definitely is on this field. Wildlife damage. This is a sign of that. I don't know if this is a bear or a deer or the raccoons climbing up on the stalk. You can see like something was definitely nibbling there. And then, being this has been corn on corn forever, and there wasn't a lot of fertilizer put up here. It was low on potash, and I think we definitely have some disease pressure. Looking at our stalk here, and then looking at our husk, we definitely have some issues. I'm not sure what corn disease that is, but we got some problems. So had issues with slugs early on this year. That wet weather and this corn on corn scenario definitely wasn't a good mix. So I don't know. I put down triple stack corn with some pretty hefty genetics, or at least it claims that it did. So some disease resistance and things like that, but you can still tell we had some issues. So maybe it needed some fungicide late in the year, but this definitely isn't a field to be coming in here late with a sprayer. So maybe I would have had to get like a spray drone here or something. Anyways, enough complaining, enough excuses. Let's check on a cob here and see what we got going. Which looks really good, but I think this is a flex variety, and you can see some of these plants put on a double cob, but the double cob really isn't much of anything. And part of me thinks that we would have been better off if it just wouldn't have put a extra cob on and just focused on that initial corn cob. Then some plants here, I think we're definitely going to be gaining some yield there. So by no means is every cob this, but this is a good looking cob here. Not any tip back, filled out really nice. And part of that could be here that, you know, its neighbors got damaged, then she took more of the nutrients. And we'll go to a bit more uniform spot here. I definitely want to note that not the entire field is like this. This field has a lot of inconsistencies, and that's due to me and the past management practices here on this field and the infertility. I put some fertilizer into this, and hopefully we get a good average up here. So comparing it to the right cob, that's on that no-till ground on the backside of the home farm, and way more uniformed, way thicker of a cob, way better looking cob. I think our kernel count isn't too far off. And then on the left here is Dad's turbo-tilled piece. These two cobs had very similar tillage practices. The one on the left had more manure and organic matter than the one on the right. The one on the right is my cob, and it was pretty much just synthetic fertilizer. Only 16 around, so by no means is it the best cob of corn in the area, but I'm happy with what I'm gonna get, that's for sure. But anyways, there's a crop tour for the beginning of September for the 2024 season. Thank you all for sticking to the end. Let me know down in the comments what the crops are doing in your area, what type of yields you see in your area, what crops did the best this year. If you had water issues like we did, I'd be interested to know about it. Also, let us know what you would do different. But that is gonna be it. I'm gonna end off the video here. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.